Okay, well, my name is Nathan Scott. I'm the Executive Director of Mass Energize, and I hope all of you are here for our heat pump webinar with Steve Breit. So just a few announcements just as we get started. If everybody could, if you heard me earlier, if you could just rename yourself with your both your name, which is on the screen, but also your either town or organizational affiliation. That just helps us keep track of the various towns that are represented by our attendees. Um, so we are going to have Steve Breit from the Heat Smart Alliance presenting, and then we're also going to hear from Ann Harris, who lives in Wayland, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her experience with her heat pump. So we are also going to have a Q&A session at the end. So please, hold your questions, and I'm sure Steve would be happy to take questions. And with that, I think we're going to get started. So can everybody hear me all right? Can you give a
Yep,
thumbs up or some other indication? Um,
I can hear
and
you
we,
fine.
okay. So it looks like one or two more people are just joining, so I'm just going to let them join. So, okay. Well, again, welcome everybody. We're going to start with a poll. Those of you who have been a part of kind of our Mass Energize or our plug-in campaigns, we like to just do a poll just to get a sense of people's experience in the meeting. So here we're going to start with a poll, and I hope everybody is able and willing to take the poll. Here we go, and I'll just give you a few minutes. If you don't mind just letting us know what community you're from and what your prior knowledge of heat pumps is. So, and there are two questions. So please, if you don't mind, just kind of make sure you, yeah, both answer both questions. Okay, another 15 seconds. So everybody had a chance. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. Thank you very much. And here are the results. Hmm. So it looks like we've got a good selection of folks from Sudbury, Swampscott, and Wayland. That's great. And it looks like we've got a mixture of people for whom heat pumps are new, a few more who have some minimal amount, and then a few who are very knowledgeable. So, okay. Well, with that, I'm going to pass it over to Steve Breit from the Heat Smart Alliance. Steve.
All right. Thank you, Nathan. Hi, everybody. I'm going to let me share my screen. And all right. Nathan, do you see my heat pumps for homes?
Yes.
All right, great.
Yes.
All right, so this event is being jointly sponsored by Plugin, which is run by Mass Energize. Nathan I don't think you said so, but you're the executive director of Mass Energize.
Right.
And I'm affiliated with both Mass Energize and Heat Smart Alliance. So I'll tell you briefly about the Heat Smart Alliance. Our mission is to reduce carbon pollution by accelerating adoption of energy efficient heat pumps in Massachusetts homes. We do that. The applications we're looking at are home heating and cooling and water heating. We're all volunteer organization. We have currently over 140 members from over 55 Massachusetts communities and growing. And we just do we do events like this to educate. We provide one-on-one coaching to residents, and we collaborate it with like-minded partner organizations, and Mass Energize is a prime example, but there are a few others, of course. So in order to maintain our objectivity, we don't accept donations or referral fees from installers or manufacturers, basically anybody who has a financial stake in the technologies that we're promoting. Why heat pumps? And some of you I saw from the survey that some of you are new to them, some of them quite experienced. So some of this will be review or not new to you, and some of you it'll be new. If you look at overall energy use in Massachusetts, residences account for close to 30% of usage. I checked that the latest data available is for 2023, and that percentage for residential use holds. And then where is the energy going within the homes? Well, about 54% is for home heating, so that's a big portion of that residential use, another 5% for cooling, and then 18% for water heating. So if you put those things together, almost 80% of home energy use in Massachusetts can be handled by heat pumps. What are the steps to home decarbonization? In other words, reducing the carbon emissions from that home energy use. The first step is weatherizing, insulating, and air sealing. And there are a lot of services. All the plug-in communities are eligible for services provided by Mass Save, and they provide either 100% coverage for some services and up to 75% for others. So very generous incentives to do that work. The next step is electrifying instead of burning fossil fuels in the house for heating, either heating the air or heating hot water to electrify those uses. That's what tonight's seminar is about. But of course, electric cars and electric stoves and all that helps too, particularly induction stoves. And then the third part of that, which is really its own topic, is shifting to renewable energy, whether it be rooftop solar, community solar, or increasing what you pay a little bit to make sure you're getting 100% renewable electricity. What's a heat pump? Well, it's pretty simple. Moves heat from a cooler place to a warmer place. You may know that heat naturally moves in the opposite direction from warm places to cold places. So a heat pump reverses that process, moving it from a cold place to a warm place. And believe it or not, you actually you're already familiar with a lot of heat pumps, refrigerators, dehumidifiers, and air conditioners are heat pumps. We just don't call them that, but they actually fit that definition on the first line. And they're available now for home heating and cooling, water heating, clothes drying, and pool heating. And if you get one of the newer electric cars, guess what supplies heat? It's a heat pump in the car too. So the way they work, the most common ones extract heat from the outdoor air. They use roughly 1 unit of electricity and 2 units of energy heat from the outdoor air to produce 3 units of heat in the home. So that's a 3-to-1 ratio for the electricity in to the heat in the home, much more efficient than any other type of heating system. And if there's nothing else I'd like you to remember that heat pumps, although we call them heat pumps, provide both heating and air conditioning. In many cases, if your home doesn't already have air conditioning, then this is a great way to get it and get the benefits of the heat pump for the heating season. What are those benefits? Substantially reduces carbon pollution. I'll quantify that in a minute. They're safer if you completely remove the fossil fuels, natural gas. There's no risk of carbon monoxide poisoning or explosion. They're quieter than modern heat pumps are quieter than most air conditioners, a lot quieter than window air conditioners, and quieter than older outdoor central air conditioners. They provide superior comfort year around, summer and winter, and they do that by modulating the temperature much more evenly than do conventional heating systems, which tend to shut on. They go on for a while, then they turn off, then they come on, wait till the temperature drops, come on again. Heat pumps tend to run all the time. Don't worry, that's actually more efficient and therefore modulate temperature better than conventional heating systems. You also get the benefit of some air filtering. And in my case, I really enjoy having, I used to have baseboard hot water heat, and the air in the wintertime got kind of stuffy. And I find that having a little circulation actually makes the house more comfortable and reduces sniffles and all that. So carbon pollution reduction, quantify this. So we're looking here at a 2000 typical 2000 square foot home, and the horizontal scale is the number of metric tons. A ton is a little bit more than an English ton of 2,000 pounds. So the way to think about this one metric, a typical car now weighs about 2 tons. So think about if your home is burning a fossil fuel like fuel oil, it's putting the equivalent of the weight of 4 cars into the atmosphere in carbon dioxide. If it's propane, it's a little bit cleaner. Natural gas is cleaner, but still not great. And then baseboard electric is comparable to natural gas because there's still emissions at the power plant. And the cleanest way to do it is with ground source or air source heat pumps. Don't worry, I'm going to explain momentarily what those two types are. But they are by far put out less emissions, and that's just using standard. All the communities that are in plug-in have community choice electricity. They have several levels of greenness. The standard green is what most people default to, and so that there's still some. It's not 100% green. It might be 40% green, 50% renewable. So there's still some emissions at the power plant. If you and all of the communities that are part of the plug-in campaign, they also have an option to up to 100% renewable energy. In that case, the heat pump emissions are effectively zero, so a big win. There are different types of heat pump, which type is right for your home. And my mantra here is having done this for 4 or 5 years and also as a coach to individual homeowners, is every home is unique. So, but there are a couple criteria you can kind of figure out what might make sense for your home. And it really depends on the existing heat distribution type. So if your home has hot water baseboards or radiators or even steam radiators, also radiant floors, then you have something, the heating system is called a boiler. The unit that's probably in your basement is a boiler. And so that's the one type. Roughly, if I asked for a show of hands, I'll bet 50% of you have hydronic heating. The other common type, and this is in New England, hydronic heating is quite common. In other parts of the country, it's less common. So in this area, newer homes and some older homes have what's called forced air systems. The distribution is from supply and return vents, usually in the walls or sometimes in the floor, and they're connected via ductwork to a furnace. And again, the furnace is usually in the basement. So furnace, boiler, depends which you have. People sometimes use them interchangeably, but that really determines what type of heat pump might work for your home. So let's take the case of heat pump options for hydronic distribution. Remember, that's hot water baseboards or radiators. And so the most economical way usually to add a heating and air conditioning with a heat pump to the home is with what's called a ductless system. Originally, these were called mini splits because it was a relatively small capacity outdoor unit connected to a single indoor unit, usually mounted on the wall, looking like this diagram, like this image on the right. About 10 or 15 years ago, the manufacturers started to introduce multi-zone ductless systems. We sometimes call them multi-splits. So the outdoor units had more capacity and they could connect to multiple indoor units. Usually it's these wall units, but there are, if you're not, if you don't like the aesthetics of the wall unit or you don't have space on the walls for those, there are other options. There are floor-mounted units like the one at the bottom. There are also ceiling cassettes that can be mounted in, flush mounted into the ceiling. So this diagram isn't meant to say that you need one of each. It means that these are the options available, and you might have multiple of those indoor units connected to one outdoor unit. And there are even these outdoor units can even connect to small, they're called air handlers, horizontal ducted units, and they can serve 2 or 3 or even 4 rooms sometimes, depending on their capacity. So that's another option. So when you put in a ductless system, you can either disable your fossil fuel system if the ductless system has adequate capacity, or you can keep it around as a backup for backup heat in extreme conditions. And we'll talk, there is some, it matters for getting mass save incentives, which one you do. But in terms of resilience and comfort, it's not a bad idea to keep that fossil system around if it's still working. All right, now let's move to the case of forced air distribution. Again, you have these sheet metal ducts going from the furnace in the basement to the supply vents in the rooms and a whole return ducting system usually. And there are 2 ways to go in that case. One is called partial electrification or hybrid systems, where you usually have to get a new furnace, and then on top of the furnace, there's something called a coil. And the coil is just a heat exchanger that's connected via the refrigerant lines to the outdoor unit. The appearance of the outdoor unit, some of them actually look very similar to central air conditioners, but some of them now look like the outdoor units that I showed you in the previous slide for ductless systems. Or you can do complete electrification. In that case, the same outdoor unit might be connected to an indoor air handler. What that is a fan or blower plus the coil, but contained in one casing. And so that all replaces your furnace coil combination or replaces the furnace. And so that's how you get to 100% electrification with a heat pump with a ducted system. And finally, there are also ground source systems. Those systems pull heat out of the ground. If you get below 4 feet below the ground level in this area, the ground stays above 50 degrees year round. And so those systems very efficiently extract heat from the ground. And that also is a means of complete electrification. And the unit in the basement looks similar to this air handler, but it actually it's a bit more complicated. So whether you can do any of these approaches depends on the existing ducting being suitable, and that's something that the HVAC companies, the heat pump installers, really have to make a judgment. If it's not suitable, sometimes it can be sealed or rebuilt to make it suitable for use with the heat pump. I'll just briefly say that ground source heat pumps are the most efficient type of heat pumps, 50 to 70% higher efficiency than air source heat pumps, which means lower energy costs and less carbon pollution. There were very generous incentives for ground source heat pumps, but unfortunately those are expiring on December 31st this year. And so you might still want to look at it, but it'll be quite prohibitive now to go with a ground source heat pump. The air source heat pumps have a lower lower cost of installation, and They don't disturb landscaping because there's no drilling of wells in the yard to access get deep into the ground. And they're currently again, the ground source are mainly an option if you already have ducting or in new construction. If your home doesn't have ducting, then that makes the ground source approach even more prohibitive. Finally, heat pump water heaters. There are a variety of them. I'll only mention here the most common type, which are known as hybrid, or we call them HPWH, or heat pump water heaters. They look very similar to a conventional electric water heater. They're a bit taller. They offer 60% savings on energy and carbon pollution versus conventional electric heaters, and a very quick payback too because of that. And they can be installed either by HVAC companies or plumbers. And I'll mention later that actually it's here. MassSave has just created a heat pump water heater marketplace. So if you go to masssave.com and look around, you should find this. If not, we'll make a PDF of this presentation available. And this is actually a link to the right place on the MassSave site. And they're offering a streamlined buying process and fixed price installs from participating contractors. It's a brand new program, only started a few weeks ago, so I don't know anyone who's been through it yet, but certainly worth trying. All right, so another big question on everyone's minds is how much will this cost? I'm going to talk first about the financial incentives. The installation cost varies so widely based on what the situation in your home, how large the home is. If there are if questioners want to ask questions about rough ideas for their home, I can probably provide some numbers, but for purposes of this presentation, it's difficult to give a single representative number. So I'll focus here on the incentives for 2025. So if you get it done still this year, there's up to $10,000 available for the air source heat pumps. If you do a whole home, if you do a partial home, then it depends on the capacity of the heat pumps. To give some idea, a typical home requires 3 to 4 tons. So let's say it's 4 tons of capacity, then you're looking at a rebate of $5,000. And that rebate is capped. This would have to be a pretty large home to qualify for that $10,000 partial home rebate. In 2026, those rebates taper off a little bit, as you can see. So if you can get it done this year, I'm told the installers are all pretty booked up. It might be tough, but you could try to take advantage. The ground source heat pumps this year have $15,000 rebate. Next year, these are the MassSave rebates, so controlled by the state. It decreases a bit to 13.5. And heat pump water heaters, there is a rebate, but it's paid to the distributor, so it's baked into the price that you are quoted, that $750. And finally, there's a MassSave has a all capital letters loan. It's 0% for 3 to 7 years. They have a bank, you apply through one of the banks that services these loans, and that's a pretty sweet deal, 0% interest in these times. So now there are additional benefits, somewhat more complex for income eligible residents. There are 2 levels of income eligibility. There's low income and moderate income. I won't even attempt to go into those here. And then there have been this year federal tax credits for an air source heat pump. Most installations would qualify for the full $2,000 max federal tax credit. And the ground source, there was a 30% tax credit. All of these are going away starting January 1st. And heat pump water heaters, also a $2,000 tax credit. A relatively new program, not well known is called the Energy Saver Home Loan Program. That's sponsored by the Massachusetts Community Climate Bank. And they provide actually pretty comprehensive services. If you haven't done much to your home or you're contemplating multiple things, they will take a look at they'll, at no cost, they'll provide an assessment of all the things you can do. And if the combined work that you do will result in 20% home energy savings or more, then you're eligible for loans to cover that work. The interest rates are very attractive, depending on income, either 0.5% or 2% for 20 years. So it's a bit like a second mortgage, but at a very attractive rate. Um, Big news in the last month or two is that all the utilities in Massachusetts, I'll focus on Eversource again because I think most of you have Eversource as your electricity supplier. They're offering a discount of 7.45 cents per kilowatt hour starting November 1st. And we're expecting that may be adjusted a little bit up or down, but it'll prevail through the end of April next year. And so that's a pretty nice discount. The typical your total charge for electricity is around 31 to 33 cents per kilowatt hour. So 7.5 cents is roughly a 20% discount, which is pretty sweet. And the good news, it applies to all of your electricity use, not just the heat pump use, because they have no way of separating that out. To be eligible, you have to be using the heat pump to heat all or part of your house. And enrollment is supposed to be, since this program was only approved a month or two ago, it's a little slow on getting details on how to make sure you get that rate. But supposedly, it'll be automatically given to anybody who received a Mass Save rebate for a heat pump installed after January 1st, 2019. I do have one coaching client who got hers in 2021, and she received a letter or email from Eversource informing her that she would be on the rate. So that's very encouraging. And we have a link. There's more information about it on the Eversource website. If you did not receive a rebate but think you qualify, then you'll have to call Eversource. But I would wait maybe another week or two because the online representatives haven't been fully briefed and trained on this yet, as far as I know. And they are actually discussing larger discounts for the next heating season. So the other part of this we can talk about is annual heating cost comparison, again, for a typical 2,000 square foot home, meaning typical wood construction. And I'm using here the community choice rate, the standard rate that's available in most of the participating plug-in communities, and some values that we get from the Massachusetts.gov website for the other energy sources. And we're assuming that regardless of what the fuel is, that you're using high efficiency new equipment. So what you can see here is the most expensive way to heat is baseboard electric. If you have baseboard electric, then it's really a no-brainer to switch to a heat pump. You'll recover the costs in no time at all with the savings for an air source heat pump. And you can see that here. And these, since we're reflecting this new heat pump discount, it's news that air source heat pumps are competitive within, just a few dollars of the cost of heating with natural gas. So that's really great. And you'll save a little bit if you use fuel oil, even more if you're using propane as your current heating fuel. Again, ground source heat pumps they're the lowest cost, but have high upfront cost. Of course, this is based on current energy rates, and those change. So, what the energy costs will vary over time with your heating system. So when you're looking, and if you're looking at this as a financial decision, you have to really look at a first cost difference. What's the cost of, and usually converting to a heat pump makes the most sense when your existing system is aging out, or needs extensive repairs. That's a point where you have to do something, you need heat. So you have to compare the cost of the heat pump versus conventional equipment. If you also want cooling, then you should include that, the cost of doing that. Um, and then looking at the incentives I just described, the rebates, the loans, the tax credits will unfortunately be less of a factor now, and reduced electricity rates. And you might even consider assigning a price to the carbon pollution if you're, um, common good minded. And there is some evidence that it can increase the heat, having a heat pump can increase home resale value. How much, that's really difficult to tease apart. And then put some value on the comfort improvements. If you don't have central, if the home isn't air conditioned now, then that's kind of a pretty high value change, on those really hot summer days. So your action plan: convert, when your existing equipment is aging, for heating and cooling equipment over 15 years, particularly cooling equipment at 15 years, it's reached its life expectancy. For old boilers, boilers can last longer, and furnaces sometimes too. But at the point it's aging, with water heaters, if it's a conventional electric water heater, you should be happy to get 7 to 10 years out of it. Um, the thing you want to do is plan ahead. You don't want to wait till the heating, particularly a water heater is not as big a deal, but to replace a heating system, it takes time to get quotes and evaluate those. And so you'll want to, not wait till it actually fails. If your home doesn't have air conditioning yet, this is the way to do it with a heat pump. And so then you kill two birds with one stone, really. And finally, if you're planning an addition, renovation, or a new home, heat pumps can definitely meet 100% of the heating and cooling needs. I don't know why, if anybody's building or doing these things, you should absolutely be trying to get 100% of the heating and cooling from a heat pump. So some ways to get started, and then I'll turn it over to Ann for a testimonial. The Heat Smart Alliance, we have a page for homeowners. I recommend, if it's basically a clearinghouse to some other good resources at Mass Save and the Mass Clean Energy Center. The Plug-in Metro West campaign, of course, has links as well. You'll want to get a no-cost Mass Save home energy assessment. You can do that via Mass Save or directly via a Mass Save contractor. If somebody recommends a particular contractor, you can go straight to them to request the home energy assessment. And then there are several forms of assistance available. One is Mass Save itself has something called a decarbonization consultation that's separate from the home energy assessment done by some people with really good training. And it's done virtually, but can be very helpful at the beginning of the process. Or if you get multiple quotes, they can do a quote comparison for you. A very nice service from Mass Save. And then the Heat Smart Alliance, we provide and train volunteer coaches. And to find the coaching program, we have a directory on our website, again, under the homeowners section for requesting a coach. You'll see a directory, and that'll send you to the right place to request somebody for your town. Really recommend getting some of that advice before you start calling installers, so that you're prepared to ask questions of the installers. Once you have that in hand, you'll need to get quotes. We typically recommend at least 3 quotes, and you'll learn from talking with each installer, and there are a lot of factors involved, so you'll get a range of prices. So that's it for me. Thanks for listening. You can find us again at heatsmartalliance.org. Let me stop my share and turn it over to Anne. Sorry, I went on longer than I expected.
Okay.
Anne, go, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, thanks, Steve. I'm Ann Harris, and I'm a Wayland resident, and I also have heat pumps in my own house. So I'd be happy to share my experience with those. We actually have ductless system in our house entirely now, but when we started out, our previous system it was an oil system, but we had a ducted system to distribute it throughout the house. It was called a Unico system, and which has small flexible ducts, and they're kind of a high velocity. But one of the problems, we were really unhappy with it. One of the problems was it was in the attic, and we had only one zone for the whole house. So the distribution was really terrible. Our upstairs floor, which was right below the system, was super warm, and we could hardly get the heat to the first floor. So that was one thing we were really unhappy with. It also was poorly installed, so we were losing a lot of heat into the attic. So about 10 years ago, actually, we were kind of on the leading edge. We got two mini splits installed to even out that heat. One was in the office, and then we put another one in our living room, dining room, kitchen area. And that really helped. It would kept those rooms warm. Those were the rooms we were in most of the time on the first floor. Uh, but we were still not happy with the original system. So about 3 years ago, we decided to put heat pumps in the rest of the house and go totally off oil. We wanted to get away from oil heat. So we added ductless wall units to the three bedrooms upstairs and the guest room downstairs. And we also put in something that's kind of interesting called a compact ducted system. Steve just referred to it, I noticed, as a horizontal ducted system, but we wanted to add some heat to our mudroom, excuse me, our um, kitchen and dining room, because the original heat pump we put in the living room was really way down at the other end, and it wasn't blowing in the right direction. So but we didn't have any room on the walls for wall heat pump units. So we put this compact ducted system in the basement. It hangs from the ceiling of the basement, and it has these short, flexible ducts that go up to heat the kitchen, mudroom, and dining room with little vents in the floor. So we've been really happy with that. It's something actually people might want to consider if they have, for instance, three smaller bedrooms upstairs and they don't want to put a mini split head in each room. You could put one of these compact ducted systems in the attic. So that's another option. But we've been really happy with our system. It really solved a lot of issues that we had. Some of the things we really like about it is that each of the ductless units in every room has its own temperature control. So if you like to sleep when it's 72 and somebody else likes it to be 62, everybody gets to choose their temperature, and that works for AC as well. We had an air conditioning system that was, associated with our old ducted system, but it broke a while ago, and it was going to cost a large amount of money to fix it. So we got the AC along with these heat pumps, which again, every room has its own kind of AC temperature control. And we like the way the heat is distributed. The heat pumps are very quiet when they're operating. It's a really nice, even, kind of slow heat. Whereas when we had the ducted system, it would blow really hot when it was on, and then it felt like the room would cool down really quickly when it turned off. So we've been super happy with our system, no regrets, and I'm an enthusiastic supporter. So thanks.
right, thanks, Ann. So I guess we'll open it up for questions, Nathan.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay.
Folks, if you'd like to just, either virtually raise your hand, or you could come off of mute. And, if you don't mind turning your camera on so we can see you as you ask your question. But yeah, anybody who'd like to can either speak up or raise your hand virtually and I'll call on you.
Hey, Ann, this is Chris Goff,
Hi.
and described putting in a whole series of these. So I'm assuming they're air source. And how many do you have total?
Oh, yeah, they're air source heat pumps. Well, the first two we put in uh, were just single zone mini splits. So one indoor wall unit connected to one outdoor heat pump. And then we put in, so that's two. Then we put in one in each bedroom upstairs, which some people want to do that. Some people might choose that compact ducted system I talked about. So that's three more, one more in the downstairs bedroom. So we've got 6 wall units altogether, and this small compact ducted system, which is in the basement but has the floor vents to the others. And we have outdoor units. We have the 2 originals that were with the mini splits, and then we have 2 others that have, one of them has 2 indoor units on it, and the other has 2 plus the compact. Does that answer your question?
It does. Now, are most of these sort of not visible from the street?
Actually, they're not. We were able to put one on the side of the house and actually 2 on the side, one on the back, and the one in the front is kind of behind some bushes. So no, and we don't have any of there's the conduit that goes on the outside of the house, and it's covered with something that looks like a gutter, but it's painted the same color of the house. Those are all on the sides and the back too, so there's nothing visible from the front.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, any other questions for either Steve or Ann?
Well, I guess I'll ask another one. So I'm here for myself as a homeowner and also for this Sudbury Food Pantry. And I know we've got another pantry volunteer in the audience. Are there any different considerations for not-for-profits, 503C? I can never remember what that is.
So you're asking about the incentives, Chris, or?
Incentives, Eversource policies, anything that
Yeah.
we would.
Yeah, I'm not sure about, I'm not aware of, so I would contact the Mass Save program. They have different programs for residential and commercial use, and even though you're a nonprofit, it would be under the commercial program. I know my house of worship got quite a bit of weatherization work done by Mass Save at no cost under the commercial program. So, and it's different contractors because I'm slightly familiar with the new building that Sudbury Food Pantry has because my wife Lisa Breit is a regular volunteer there.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, so I think you're in a small commercial building there. So I would contact the Mass Save program to see what incentives they have, and they may also have. I don't spend much. It's a pretty large website, so you might also look there at what incentives are provided. There might be information there about special benefits for nonprofits. And
Right.
as far as Eversource, you could probably call their customer service and find out if, as a nonprofit, if you're eligible for any lower rates or rate discounts.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, it's 501(c)(3). That's what I can never read.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, yes, Fred.
Sorry, I wasn't prepared for that. I thought I had a pretty good case for switching to a heat pump in that our previous owners put in a central AC system, and this is over 25 years ago now. And it has micro vents that go everywhere. This was obviously a retrofit into a system that had a house that had hot water baseboard heat.
Yeah.
And I've talked to a couple of people about this, and the first person said, no, you can't do that. No way. And the second person said, well, yes, you can do that. And they gave us a quote that just seemed absurd. I mean, compare the price of replacing the AC system, which maybe we'll have to do someday, although it works fine now,
Yeah.
and a heat pump that goes both ways, so to speak. It was at least 2 to 1. It just seemed a lot. So I just wondering if you had any comments about that.
Yeah, so when you say let me just confirm first, when you say micro vents, these are small outlets that are maybe an inch and a half, 2 inches in diameter that have high velocity air coming out of them.
Yeah, so it's at least 2
Yeah.
inches. I'd be surprised if it's only 2, but
Yeah.
not much more than that.
So that's what
When I
Ann,
had-
that's exactly what Ann Harris had. It's called a high velocity system because the velocity it's quite a jet stream coming out of those, and they make some noise when it's running, right?
Yeah.
So those systems, they were made by one company, as far as I know, called Unico, and they made the indoor units, the air handler that blows the air. The outdoor part of it was, some other party. It wasn't made by Unico. Yours might have been a Carrier or some, one of the air conditioning brands. And it is possible to connect Bosch heat pumps in particular to those systems, as is. How efficient the efficiency is questionable because they're not really well matched to the indoor equipment. And then Unico itself, it's a modular system. So depending on if they were quoting you, they can leave the original case in place, but they can slide in a new fan, a new blower module, and a new coil, and connect that to an outdoor unit. That would be somewhat better efficiency, but still not, still somewhat questionable. So I did have one client here in Wayland who had a Bosch heat pump connected to a Unico system. I think the cost was, it was under $10,000, but this is a couple of years ago. So I don't know what if I could imagine if you got it quoted now, it might be, again, if they replaced the parts that are inside that cabinet inside, it might have come to $20,000. If it was more than that, yeah, I would agree that's exorbitant.
Yeah, okay. Well, 20 seemed like a lot anyway.
Well, that's kind of what it costs, if you're doing both the indoor and outdoor part. That's a pretty typical cost. And keep in mind, you'd get some of that back on a rebate. But you might also it'll end up being more, but you might get a more satisfactory solution by just going with a full ductless system. But depending on the size of the house, that'll probably be more than 20,000.
Yeah. Yeah, we're trying to avoid the aesthetics of the indoor area.
Yeah, that's a concern for some, but I would not let that. You get used to them. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
There are the ceiling cassettes too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the first time I had seen that. That does look interesting.
Yeah.
We already got these vents. It'd be nice to just use them.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could do it. The efficiency probably less than you would get with a new ductless system. Considerably less, I would
Just
say.
because somebody doesn't make something specifically for that. I mean, there's no physics reason it should be less efficient, right?
Yeah, well, there's some pushing that air at high velocity uses up some not a non-trivial amount of energy, and then you don't know how well insulated those things the tubes are. I think they have some insulation, but I don't know how good it is.
Yeah, they definitely do, and we could, we could beef that
Yeah,
up. But not-
yeah, I do know somebody in Weston who heats with a high velocity system, and they had Bosch heat pumps. The reason I mention a particular brand is because I know there some brands wouldn't be compatible, and Bosch has a different approach than most of the vendors so that they have that compatibility.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah,
Prashant?
got a
Yeah.
quick one. Yeah, first of all, thank you, Steve, Nathan, and thanks for emails as well. And I'm dealing with the same sort of aesthetic concern, Steve. So we have central AC, and seems to be we're getting multiple codes and a wide kind of approach. Some are like some are basically saying you can use the ducts completely, and some have the approach that now this is only going to work for the second floor. The first floor, you're going to have to put some extra kind of ductless mini splits or some other, maybe
Uh-huh.
the ceiling ones. Is there a rule of thumb? How do I tell, like, which of these partners is correct? Like, essentially, it's almost impossible to predict that, it feels.
Well, I'd certainly, if you have the quotes in hand, I'd certainly avail yourself of that Mass Save decarbonization consultation. Ask them to do a quote comparison, discuss the home with you, and the people who do those consultations are well trained and knowledgeable. It's about depending on when you might have to wait a few weeks to actually schedule. When you go on the site and schedule it, there might be some backlog, but I think they have plenty of capacity now. So I would definitely do that. You could also request a coach. You're in Wayland, so we have a bunch
Yeah.
of qualified coaches.
Right.
I saw, we had Paul Dale on the call, and coaches, and I coach. So we have 4 or 5 coaches in Wayland, so we could also help you, figure out which is which. And I'll say in general, it sounds like I'm inferring it's a 2-story home,
Two-story home.
and you have baseboard heat on both floors, the existing baseboard heat. And then the air conditioning was put in the attic, probably with ducting, pushing air down from the ceiling.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
if it was done 20, 30 years ago, that ducting isn't very well insulated. It's probably leaky and not too well insulated. So it's hard. If the installers proposed reusing that ducting, that's questionable in my opinion. And we also we had a presentation recently to the Heat Smart Alliance by an organization that looks at heat pump pricing, and they were tracking a bunch of, something like 20 homes, some of which had ducting in the attic and some which had mini splits on the second floor. They were all 2-story homes, typical 2-story colonials. And they reported that the homes with the ducting in the attic couldn't adequately cool the home on the really hot days, because you're losing it. Ducting in an attic is a really terrible idea. It's the worst thing when the attic's really hot in the summer when you're trying to cool the home, and it's really cold in the winter when you're trying to heat the home. So reusing that ducting, if you can at all swing it, I would say just abandon that ducting, and then either compact, if you're concerned about the aesthetics, a compact solution like Anne described is okay. And probably the way to serve all the rooms on the second floor. And then for the first floor, individual ductless units would be the way to go. Or have somebody, if your basement has enough headspace, put in new ducting in the basement to serve the first floor. But again, that duct work runs into money. It's a lot more, custom work that has to be done than putting in these ductless systems.
Okay. Thanks so much. Yeah, that's very helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we are out of time, but before anybody leaves, I'm going to just ask you a favor. We're going to just do another poll, a quick poll to see. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to put the poll up now. And if you don't mind just kind of taking a few minutes to answer the poll questions, I'd appreciate that. And then after that, we'll just wrap up and send you all back to whatever you want to be doing tonight. So if you don't mind just taking a few minutes to fill out this poll. And there are a total of 5 questions. Okay, how about another 30 seconds? Appreciate your doing this.
I ask a question while I'm filling out?
Sure.
Just couple quick things. I've seen Mitsubishi out there quite a bit, Fujitsu and so forth. I just heard about Bosch. Is there different brands have certain characteristics that might be best suited to a given house? And also, what's a maintenance down the road? What kind of maintenance costs do we have?
All right. Yeah. So on brands Mitsubishi in the ductless and to some extent serving ducting, Mitsubishi has the largest market share in Massachusetts. It's probably in excess of 50%. So they're pretty well known. That said, their controls are not always the most user-friendly. Other brands can have more friendly controls in some cases. Like Bryant has very user-friendly thermostats and controls. And again, part of the equipment depends on suitability to your house. I've seen, yeah, so it's really, LG is a very well-established brand. Their small heat pumps are amongst maybe the most efficient ones on the market, more efficient even than the Mitsubishi ones, if that's what you care about the most, and reasonably reliable. They're all, in terms of maintenance requirements, is really pretty minimal. If it's installed correctly, you want to make sure that you're cleaning the filters on the indoor units on a regular basis, just opening them up. And I just use a paintbrush to brush the dust, an old paintbrush to brush the dust out of the filter. And on the ductless systems, the ducted systems usually have a air filter that should be replaced, with some regularity. And then it's probably well advised, I would say at the beginning, maybe have the installer come back after a year to look at things, and then maybe every 2 years to clean the units. The cleaning is, just cleaning out the coil, blowing out the coils and things like that. But in terms of reliability, it's comparable to a lot of electric appliances, very high reliability at this point. The issues are more with the refrigerant, when there tend to be some issues, it's because there's some leak in the refrigerant. They weren't installed properly and there's some leak of refrigerant. If they're installed properly, there should be no refrigerant leaking. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and to some extent, when you call in, each installer may do 2 or 3 brands. They won't do all the brands. So if you have in mind a particular brand, you have to find an installer who does that brand. And there's a good reason for that. They get training from the manufacturers, and each brand has some different installation requirements. So it's best if the installer, it's a brand that they usually install. They're familiar with the installation procedure. They can know how to get parts and so forth.
That's great. Thanks.
Okay, well, I think we are out of time. It's a little after 8, but thank you all for joining us. It was I hope you got your questions answered. Everybody who did register will receive a copy of the slides, Steve's slides, as well as a recording. So thank you, and please check out both the plugin website as well as the Heat Smart Alliance website for more information. And I think Steve and Ann are available for questions later on, but I think we'll wrap it up for tonight. So thank you very much.